The Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 9th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James, and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which was about to be accomplished at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent in those days and told no one of any of the things they had seen. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. Just then a man from the crowd shouted, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son. He is my only child." Suddenly a spirit seizes him, and all at once he shrieks. It convulses him until he foams at the mouth. It mauls him and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here." While he was coming, the demon dashed him on the ground in convulsions, but Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astounded at the greatness of God. This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. You may be seated. The summer after my 5th grade year, my family and I went on perhaps the biggest vacation that we had been on in my lifetime at that point. We took a long camping road trip all the way from our home in Western Illinois to Denver, Colorado. That's nothing to do with the events of later on today. That's just where we went, was into Colorado. We went up to Estes Park and stayed a few nights in the national park up there. And then we went down to Colorado Springs for probably the most memorable part of the journey. We went up all the way to the top of Pikes Peak, which is in this image right here. We took that cog train, instead of driving up on our own or even attempting to walk, we took the cog train and we drove past log cabins and yellow-bellied marmots and the tree line until we got all the way to the top where there's nothing really but moss and rocks and the wind that was warm down below in the summer heat has turned into blasts of cool air. And it's thin up there, but you can see literally for hundreds of miles. Some say, and you can take this with a grain of salt, that you can see up to 5 states at once standing on the top of Pikes Peak. Naturally, that has to be a very, very clear day, and you have to have really good eyesight to see the horizon, to see Kansas way out there. But it's possible that you can see Kansas standing on a mountain in the middle of Colorado. That's a sight that can take your breath away, that can give you a different perspective of the world we live in. To see that world from a vantage point that you don't get to see every single day. For many of you who've experienced this or have been on other mountains, you know what it's like to just literally be in that mountaintop moment. Of course, there are other times in our lives where we have this moment where we seem to be taken out of our life and transported to a place where we have a different vantage point, where we know that we're in a place that is good and right and overwhelmingly awe-inspiring. And we have a hard time letting go, taking that cog train back down the mountain, past the tree line, past the animals and the log cabins, and back to the ground below. That's why people, after a really great concert, chant for encore after encore. It's why children and youth hate the end of summer camps and mission trips. It's why some of you yearn to have that winter vacation in Florida to be extended just a week longer. And maybe it's just because of the weather, but in the end, it's really because there's something about being taken out of the ordinary that can just transport you. But we all know that life isn't meant to be in those mountaintop moments. Sooner or later, we always have to come back down to reality, to our daily routine, to the normal, mundane, day-by-day life that we carry. In today's reading, that's what Peter is resisting. He longs to stay in that moment on the mountaintop with Jesus and Moses and Elijah. Let's build houses and never come down. And you hear the story of the transfiguration, and then following it, the story of Jesus going down and healing this boy. And it seems like these stories don't fit together. But really, they capture what it's like for all of us to go from a moment of high euphoria back down to the daily life that we lead. For Jesus and his disciples to have seen this transfiguration and then go and continue the ministry that they had must have given them a bit of whiplash. But the things they learned, the way that they were changed up there, continued to shape who they were. That mountaintop experience wasn't just left on the mountain. It changed who they were from that day forward. In fact, just a few verses after this reading today, Jesus hints to his disciples about what's going to happen when they get to Jerusalem, the betrayal and the pain that he's going to suffer in the future. We're meant to come down from the mountain, but we're also meant to come down and live a little bit differently than we were before, to bring whatever has transformed us up there back down to the real world. These blankets and these shoes are going to a ministry here in Rockford called Rock House Kids that's been around for 16 or 17 years, where at-risk children in this city can go and have a safe shelter a few nights a week. It's grown so there's sometimes a couple hundred kids there at once, all getting a warm meal and having a safe place where they can be in their neighborhood but also be taken away to someplace better. Rock House Kids is right in the middle of a very distraught neighborhood, and they're not leaving because they want to be in the midst of the people. And these kids, we think, will have to leave then and go back to their lives, but they don't just leave with a belly full of warm food. Their backpacks are filled with other necessities and foods and things to carry them throughout their days before they can come back to this safe refuge that we call Rock House Kids. Because we can't stay in safe places all the time. But we can take a little bit of that safety and security, that euphoria along with us, to shape the rest of our lives. And life can change because those safe places exist. I don't know what it is that brought you here this morning into this room, whether it was normal routine or whether someone dragged you out of bed and made you come, whether you wanted to sing music or to listen to music, or whether you're like Peter and you're hoping to come to this place and see a beautiful vision of God, to have a renewal and experience God on a different level. You may get that sometimes here, and some other times you may not. You may experience some renewal, maybe even some transformation. But to be astounded by God, like the people in today's reading, we have to leave the mountaintop and go back to the world. Obviously, you're all going to be going back home. You always do leave this place after worship, especially today since you have somewhere to be, you have nachos to eat at a Super Bowl party. But it's because it's not just about descending the mountain and getting your head out of the clouds. You do that all the time. Mountaintop moments, though, however small, they transform us. If you encounter God at the food pantry or in a song or in special moments with family and friends, or books and discussion groups that deepen your thinking. That transformation only sticks when you take what's changed you into the world and you take God into the everyday moments of your life. Far too often, worship and church are seen as a destination, as a place that we go to. It's a place where faith happens. But what if we were to look at it the other way around? What if we were to see church as a place that sends us into the world? The place where faith is recharged, where forgiveness is tasted, and God's people are strengthened for the continuing journey of their lives. Because faith is really not about ascending. Faith is about descending. As we hear Paul writes in his letter to the Philippians in this wonderful hymn that he tells, he says, though Jesus had equality with God, did not consider that godliness as something to be exploited, but he gave it up and took on human form and went so low to be seen even as a slave, and became so low that he suffered even death in the most scandalous way on a cross. That's a little bit of a snapshot of what's going on in this transfiguration story today. God coming down from the mountain to meet people in the depths of their lives. Because Jesus is frustrated when he gets down the mountain to see that his disciples haven't quite got it yet. And he's hoping that something has been taken down from the mountain and they can be transformed in their world. Because this transfiguration isn't just any mountaintop experience, because God here literally comes down to earth. And that means that we're meant to come down from our mountaintop experiences to transform the world around us and come down to earth. In a famous speech aptly named, "I've Been to the Mountaintop," Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the work that they were doing for the sanitation workers in Memphis. This was also the last speech that he gave. It was the night before he was assassinated. It was April 3rd, 1968. And his whole talk was all about not continuing to bring his glory, but to work for the most average working people of the city, the people who had to go through everyone else's filth, and he was fighting for them. And he said, in this famous quote, he said, "The question is not what will happen to me if I do this. The question is what will happen to them if I do not do this." Now here's a person who very much was trying to emulate what it means to follow Jesus and to live the way Christ does. This God who said, what will happen to me? The question isn't what will happen to me if I come down to this earth, but what will happen to them if I do not? And so in this season of Lent, we're going to be exploring what it means for God to come down to us, to be with us in our everyday lives. We're going to send these shoes and these blankets from this holy place because we long for that holiness to linger and to share it and spread it to the world around us. And just like these blankets and these shoes, we're going to go out from here. And I pray that all of us take whatever transformative moments that we have, however small, into the world around us to shape the world. Because whatever reason you come to this place, I hope that you come here to help get a bit of perspective and even receiving a bit of blessing and forgiveness. And so take that perspective, take that blessing with you into the world as you continue the routine of your lives. Amen.